Welcome back to another episode of the Voices of Boyle. In this episode, we have the talented actor and writer Jarlath Tivnan joining us to share his journey in the world of theatre and film. From his transition into acting after university to his experiences in auditions and professional productions, Jarlath takes us behind the scenes and reveals the dedication and perseverance required to pursue a career in acting. We delve into the intricacies of theatre versus film acting, the challenges of finding truth in a character, and the ever-present uncertainty that comes with a career on stage or in front of a camera. So grab a cuppa and enjoy the chat with Jarlath. Well, Jarlath, thanks very much for coming on to the Voices of Boyle podcast. You're very welcome.
Thanks very much for having me. It's a great privilege to be a part of it.
Before we get into the meat and potato of the episode, which we're going to focus on your acting career, why don't you maybe tell us a little bit about growing up in Boyle back in the young days?
Back in the 90s.
Back in the 90s.
Well, I grew up not too far away from where we are right now. I grew up in the little townland of Cornamilta, where a lot of the Tivnans reside to this very day. And I suppose the word idyllic is thrown around a lot, but I would describe it as being that, like lots of green fields, and when summers were good back then. So I can remember being outside an awful lot. Grew up on a farm. I remember quite happily feeding pigs and trying to get cattle to go the right place where you want them to go. And yeah, it just been very peaceful with my two brothers, one older, Fakra, and one younger, Connor. We always got on well with each other. And Cathal, my cousin from just down the road, Frank Tivnan's son, would come and we'd play football. We'd set up 2 empty gas cylinders and that'd be our goalposts. And we'd
innocent old days.
Innocent times. And for a couple of years when Mum and Dad used to work as well, after school for a few hours, I was minded by Mary Conroy in Forest View as well. So I would have integrated myself with that particular side of town a lot growing up as well.
Right.
So I would have been quite friendly with the Conroys when I was very young, particularly Thomas and Joseph, because they were around a similar age.
Yeah.
And going up the green, up Forest View onto the green, playing football or tag, or just generally hanging around with the Harveys. Barry Harvey would be a good friend of mine, and the Rose and the Smiths and the Conboys, which are my cousins on my mother's side. So all of that mix of people growing up as well. So I had good nights in Forest View and good healthy bucolic days and nights in the countryside out in Cornamilta.
Would you have been old enough to remember the 1990 World Cup?
No, I was born in 1990, so I remember the World Cups just after that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The most vivid, earliest memory of a World Cup would be France 98. But I remember being on a family holiday watching France versus Brazil down in Brookfield in Cork, you know, that little family resort place down. I remember being in some sort of centre with the family watching that.
Yeah.
I would have been 8 at the time watching that.
I suppose, yeah, because you're that bit younger, because I do remember there's a few photos of on the green up in Forest View. You have Phelim O'Donnell, you have Lox Conboy, you have Michael McHale, all that generation, all up there with the flags. And I don't know who took the photo, but it was a very kind of iconic photo of Ireland's, World Cup days back in 1990. But and
that famous quote, "You missed Italia 90 because you were in Italy."
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. So did you mention you're musically orientated? Because I know obviously your family on your mother's side is very.
Yes, of course.
So your connection to the Irish music would be through the fiddle, correct?
Yes. Okay. The connection, on my mother's side, the older generations of Boyle would most definitely remember Cayley House. Now, I'm far too young. Cayley House was long gone before I came about, but Cayley House would have been where Londis is now, and a very prominent pub in the town and widely associated with Irish music. So everybody from County Roscommon, every musician and Sligo and the surrounding areas would come far and wide to join in on sessions there. I do wish I was around at the time to have experienced those sessions and those great days of music, but what can you do? Unfortunately, I never heard my grandmother play the fiddle.
Kathleen Dwyer
Morris. I just had no interest or connection to traditional music until after she died. And it was funny how it came about. She passed away in 2002 and it was during her wake I got into a row with a cousin of mine. I won't name the cousin. I won't name and shame them. But I got into a row because the cousin approached me and said, Granny said that I could have her fiddle when she died. I didn't even know what a fiddle was, but to my young 12-year-old self, that felt like a great injustice. So I said, well, that isn't fair. Why should you get it? And then a third cousin heard the argument and they joined in as well. So it was a three-way argument
as to looking for it as well.
As to who would get this fiddle. And none of us, we were so far removed from having any sense of what Irish music is, never mind fiddle music. But Anne Comboy came out into the hallway and asked what the racket was all about. And so we explained it to her. And she calmly but very fairly said, none of you would even look at that fiddle until you know how to play a fiddle. So I said, I claimed, well, I'll go. I'll learn how to play the fiddle. And my two other cousins said the same thing. So that September, that would have been in June, so that September, we all went out to Gurchin, which has the Ciolóras Coleman, the Michael Coleman Centre of Music. And we all started to learn the fiddle at the same time with this very trivial goal in mind. Initially that was the goal.
The prize.
Yeah, but very quickly and rightly, it became less and less about the quote-unquote prize, and it became about the love of music. Like the idea of Granny's fiddle, for want of a better phrase, did take a back seat in my mind. Very quickly, I just fell in love with the music. And my first teacher was a man called Michael Hurley, and he's probably the most ideal teacher you could have to start off with. Such an affable, lovely, welcoming man. And I couldn't have asked for a better teacher to begin with. And then Anne Comboy would have been vital, because our lessons would take place on a Friday. But between that Friday and the next Friday, Anne would make sense of the tune for me. Whatever tune I had to learn, she would, of course, know the tune. And when you start off, you're playing music, you're very slow and it's kind of painstaking. And when a tune is really slow, it's very hard to make sense of it. It's like a painting that's half finished. You need to hear the whole thing. So Anne would have had the whole thing. She would have had the proper rhythm. So she would have dragged me up to get the proper rhythm and to get the proper nuance of, be it a jig or a reel. So it was an amazing help to have someone who had such an in-depth knowledge of the music to give me a proper sense of any given tune on any given week. And because my granny and her mother, Kathleen Dwyer Morris, was a fiddle player, I always maintain to this day that even though she's a piano accordion player, she plays the piano accordion like a fiddle.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
Even the way her fingers move along the keys, she has fiddle player's fingers, and she ornaments a tune like a fiddle player would ornament a tune, like put in rolls and triplets where I would put in rolls and triplets. So even though she was playing the piano accordion, it still made a lot of sense to me as a fiddle player.
Yeah, because I always associated Anne with the piano accordion. Mm-hmm. I've seen her play many times over the years, but I never would have known that she would have been a fiddle player as well.
Well, see, she wasn't a fiddle player, but she just played like a fiddle player would. If a fiddle player all of a sudden took up the piano accordion and you had their fiddle playing brains in their fingers, that's the way. She just, it's very hard to describe.
Yeah.
It's just, it's the way she is exclusively a piano accordion player, but just the rhythm and the ornamentation she puts into a tune is very akin to a fiddle player. And I'm not doing a great job in describing that. It's more of a visual thing when you see her fingers dancing down the keys. It was almost a subconscious thing to me. It's like, God, that's very like a fiddle player's hand.
Inherent ability, I'd say, as well, just to know that you're playing in tune on a fiddle or out of tune based on her experience with the accordion.
Yes, well, see, that's the thing. Obviously, she was very sharp when it came to tuning as well, because that's what makes the fiddle particularly hard. Like, let's say if you're a piano player, if you play the right notes, if the piano's in tune, you're going to be in tune. But even if the fiddle is in tune, it doesn't mean the fiddle player is going to be in tune.
Okay,
you could put your finger in the wrong place and it just sounds like a cat,
So
struggling.
In the end, Jarlath, who got the fiddle?
Well, it is in my possession.
Okay.
I'll say that much, but I wouldn't take much pride, or I definitely wouldn't gloat about it. I'd still see it very much as a family heirloom and as part of the family. I suppose I'm the one member who continuously plays the fiddle now to this day.
Oh, you still play?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now I have my own fiddle as well, which I covet very much, and Granny's fiddle. So I try and alternate between the two. Anytime I might pick up a fiddle, I'll try and play them equally, because a fiddle needs to be played. It's a very temperamental instrument, so if you cast it in a corner for a couple of years, the quality of its sound will diminish.
That's interesting, yeah. And did your Granny Kathleen, had she just that one fiddle? Was that her, or had she many over there, or was that kind of...
As far as I know, that would have been predominantly her one and only fiddle, and she has carved her name into it twice with a pencil. So you can see K. Morris on two parts of the fiddle. Now, I would never dare to do that myself. Never. There'll never be a J. Tivnan on it. But there's a K. Morris twice.
That's brilliant. There's so much history in that instrument then. Even from generations from now.
And it was made in 1812.
Oh, magnificent.
So it's an old one.
Ah, no, that's great. How then, just to kind of transition into the whole acting side of things, so when did you even get involved in, or thinking that you were into the kind of performing arts kind of side of things?
Well, I'll ignore everybody's rites of passage into the acting world. Everybody did the nativity, so I suppose that was my first ever performance, but I'm not going to count that because everybody does that. My first ever performance would have been in 2003. I would have been in second year in Abbey Community College, and it would have been the first ever school musical of Abbey Community College, because Abbey Community College only opened in 2002.
I was going to say,
I was the first year,
right,
of the brand new secondary school at the time. And in my second year, we did a production of Calamity Jane, directed by Frank O'Mahony, and musically directed by Lizzie Brennan, or Lizzie Hannon now, but she was still Brennan at the time. A brilliant music teacher, and a good friend now. But that, and I didn't even have a role. I didn't have a named role in the musical whatsoever. I had 3 lines in one scene, and I played a bellboy in another scene where I had to comically take off someone's suitcase, a good-looking woman's suitcase. I had to carry it out for her and do all the sorts of appropriate nods and winks to the audience. But something instinctive inside me made me relish the 3 lines that I had and the one little wordless scene that I had. There was something in me that just wanted to milk the hell out of them, rightly or wrongly. I just wanted to make the most out of them and squeeze any potential comedy or drama as I could out of them, which I did. Maybe not consciously at the time, but certainly instinctually. There was just something in me saying, God, I love this bit. I love this tiny bit that I have, and I'm only on for a minute, so I better make the most out of it. And the audience did respond massively. Of course, it was my first performance, so I didn't have the audience in mind at the time. But when the audience filled St. Joseph's Hall and the reactions started to physically hit me, the waves of laughter, I couldn't believe it. That was another level altogether. And then I remember in the Roscommon Herald, the week after the musical had finished, Ian Cooney was a reviewer at the time, and he wrote, it was an amateur secondary school production, but he gave us a lovely review. But half the review was about me.
And your little part.
And my little non-part that I had, and he lamented the lack of Irish comedy on television, and he said, all we have is Upwardly Mobile, there should be more comedy, and if there was more comedy, the first guy I'd cast on the telly would be Jarlath Tivnan. And like, to a 12, 13-year-old, this is great, and it unlocks something. But I'll preface all that by saying it was a big deal to me at the time, and I can say that now in retrospect, because growing up, I, like many young guy, I went to GAA from a very young age, from like 6 or 7 all the way up till maybe under 16s. It was just the thing you did, and all your friends were going there every Saturday and Sunday for training, and then getting on a minibus up to Tulsker over to Strokestown to play a game in the muck. And I hated it. I absolutely...
It wasn't for you.
But I never vocalised it. I'm sure if I turned around to my mother and father and said, I don't want to go to training anymore, they would have said, fine. But I just never thought it was even an option to say that. I just kind of put the head down and went. And it's not because... like the trainers were all the loveliest of people and all my friends were there, and it wasn't a bad thing. The GA was a great thing, a brilliant thing, and a great outlet for so many people, and still is. But I was just really bad at it, and so I never got playing. To nobody's fault but my own, because I'll reiterate, I was very bad. And on a squad of 20, if there was 19 official Boyle jerseys, I'd get the one at the bottom of the bag that might be an Oulra Scommon jersey. I would just put a jersey on him because he's not going to get on anyway. And so I spent many years just looking on the sideline, knowing that I wouldn't get on. And, you know, it probably doesn't do much for your confidence in a way.
It probably wouldn't, no.
You know, because... You know, as an adult, you'll understand, you know, the best people will play because they'll do the best job against the opposing team. But at the time, you can't really say that to yourself. You're not going to say you're not getting on because you're rubbish, because that'd be very cruel to yourself. But when I got on the stage, I mightn't have articulated it fully in my head at the time, but I knew instinctively that this is something, metaphorically or analogous-wise, I can be the captain of this team. I'll always be on the starting lineup, and I can set a standard. I'll always be named on the starting team, and I can be a leader in this world, and I can improve. And
but you're also, that was your passion as well. You obviously had a growing passion.
Yeah, it's a raw thing.
Yeah,
and I suppose it's still a privilege to discover your passion at that's still a very relatively young age to discover it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you finished school in St. Mary in Abbey Community College, did you go to university after?
Yeah, I went to NUIG, and like a lot of people are unsure about what they want to do in their lives, I did arts. No shade on arts degrees, but you know, it's quite vague, but then you can zero in on particular subjects as the years go on. But I remember I went into the student building the first day of secondary school, and I went into the bathrooms of the student building and into one of the stalls, and written on the toilet dispenser, on the tissue dispenser, was "pull here for an arts degree." Nice. That's the first thing. I was like, oh God, this is a great start. But within the first week of first year in NUIG, there was the Socks Day, which is the Societies Day. So in the big Bailey Allen Hall, every society known to student kind is set up. It can be DJ Sock, it can be Business Sock, Sewing Sock, Catholic Sock, all sorts of societies put up their stalls, and there's something of interest for everybody. And again, I didn't go to NUIG thinking I'm going to join the drama society. But when I went in there, I moseyed around every stand, but I just kind of was just drawn. I was like, well, if I'm going to sign up to anyone, I suppose it'll be this one. And it was called Dramsock for short. And they were auditioning for a production of Juno and the Paycock. And I auditioned for that. And I was cast as a far too young Jock Daly, a very famous role in the pantheon of Irish drama. And Dramsock would have been very formative because it's a great playground to experiment, to find your way into acting, your style of acting, your methods, your processes. And it's a very humbling ground as well, because it's a time you can make lots of mistakes, experiment and make lots of mistakes, and it's not going to ruin you. It's not professional. You're discovering things.
Finding your feet.
You're finding your feet and your way in and what works best for you. And also, it's a good learning curve for anyone who maybe want to go on and do it later on in life, because you're not just going to be an actor in a show. You're going to be helping someone put up lights. You're going to be painting the set. You're going to be sticking up posters and flogging flyers. You're going to be doing everything to get a show with a budget of €20 up on its feet so you can entertain family and friends and students. So in that regard, it's a humbling but vital experience to have. And in my 4 years of NUIG, I did 19 shows.
Through the dram sock. Okay.
Far too many. So as a result, I was failing exams left, right and centre. Now, it could be worse. I could have been out doing drugs and drink in a nightclub. Yeah. But my passion and obsession, I was in the BOI Theatre, the Bank of Ireland Theatre on NUIG grounds. If anyone was looking for me, that's where I would have been, in rehearsals or doing a show. So I have great fond memories of doing many a show there and failing many an exam as a result. I love that theatre. It has a special place in my heart, even though it's the worst. It's the location of that theatre is terrible. They built it right beside the student bar, so you could be in the middle of a very silent, sad scene, and pummeling through the walls is 400 drunk students singing "Don't Look Back in Anger." And I was like, well, this isn't an ideal thing to be happening next door, but sure, it's all part of the crack.
So that's when you kind of really got your beak wet as such. Yeah. You got to do 19 shows over 4 years.
Yeah, and I'll also just put in probably the most vital aspect or result of having done all those shows at Dramstock is I made lifelong friends there. Friends that I still hold deeply in my heart to this day and still work with.
So then did you pass your exams in
Well. So I transitioned very luckily into the professional world of acting in the last summer of my 4 years in NUIG. Again, cut to 4 years. The summer was the summer of 2012. And I was doing repeats. And while I was walking through to the library one day, I saw an advertisement for a Galway Youth Theatre production of Frank Pig Says Hello, which is the stage version of The Butcher Boy, an Irish film that most people will be familiar with, the famous Francie Brady terrorising a small town. And it's based on Pat McCabe's novel, The Butcher Boy. And in my head, I said to myself, Jarlath, don't do it. You have exams, you have repeats to do. Do not audition for this. And I did. Of course I did. And then I got cast as Francie Brady, the main role. And it's directed by a guy called Andrew Flynn, and his name will pop up again and again because he runs Decadent Theatre Company as well, a very prominent production company in Ireland, but he also directs Galway Youth Theatre, so it was a big opportunity to work under a professional theatre director. And he cast me as the role, and anybody who knows that story, the part of Francie Brady is very challenging because he runs the gamut of emotions. He's a very extreme character that bounces from anger to serious sadness to delirious happiness. It's a very physically and mentally challenging role, and it's a role for 2 hours you don't leave the stage. It's draining. But I thought in my youthful ignorance, I'll be able to do the exams and rehearse for this at the same time. And I remember even planning out my days of when I could eat between rehearsals and studying for my exams. And one evening, halfway through the rehearsals, I was walking down the stairs of the library because I didn't have time to eat. I'd been rehearsing all day and then I was studying, and I nearly fainted. I nearly fell down the stairs because I'd just become very weak. So then I had to have a sit down with myself and said, I can only do one or the other. And so that's when I said, I'm going to have to tell my parents a choice I'm going to make here. And that was very terrifying because you build it up in your own head. You know, they support you for 4 years to get you through college, and then all of a sudden you're saying, I don't want to finish these last exams. I want to do this professional production. And I remember it's probably the hardest audition I've ever done in my life. I prepared everything, what I was going to say, how I was going to say it, on the bus back to Boyle one day. And of course, what you prepare and what actually comes out of your mouth, they don't correlate, and it all fell to crap. But I got a version of my woe out there, and I was expecting Like any person, you'd expect anger or disappointment or a plain and simple no, do your exams. But they could see how important it was for me. And they just said, okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe, I was kind of stunned. I said, okay, is that it?
You were waiting for the
fire and brimstone.
Yeah.
And no, it's like, all right, go and do it. And so I was able to put all my heart and soul into this production. And I really did. Like, I wasn't off the hook now. I was more on the hook because now I had no excuse. I had just, my focus and my attention was all on this show. And it was a brilliant show. It's one of the shows I'm most proud of. And I hit the mark every night in terms of emotion and storytelling. It got great reviews. It got great reactions. It was a very powerful story. And then because of that, one night after the show, the director, Andrew Flynn, sidled up to me and said, "What are you doing in the autumn time?" I said, "Oh, nothing. Nothing right now." And he said, "I'm about to embark on a professional touring production of Martin McDonagh's A Skull in Connemara. Would you like to be a part of it?" And the way, like, he's very used to professional productions. He says, it'll be 3 months on the road, 3 weeks rehearsals. This is what you'll be getting a week. And I was reeling. And of course I said yes, but I was more happy to be able to call home and say to my mother and father, I'm after getting a job.
Vindication.
I got a job.
Yeah.
And I'm getting paid this amount every week. And I don't think I would have jumped into a job as quickly if I'd finished my degree. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Who knows? But so I was more happy for them at the time than myself.
But like even you said it felt like, okay, you did 4 years and then it was kind of like at the end, you dropped out, for a better word, right? But if you hadn't gone,
that's the thing,
for arts for 4 years in Galway, you might have never discovered Dramsock.
Yeah.
And you might have not got that opportunity in the Butcher Boy adaptation.
Exactly.
So you mightn't have had the career that you've had up until now.
It definitely set me on a path.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't an aimless result by the end of it. It was a very specific road that it led me to.
Because not many people would transition from university to professional acting
straight away. Not it's rare to be that quickly, that quick,
and to be focused as well as you are, to say, well, no, this is what I really want to do. That you have, you kind of cultivated up those feelings and that passion over the years.
Yeah,
that this was where you wanted to go, and I
took it very seriously. I mean, even though I was very young, I was only 22 at the time when I was doing my first professional production, but even back then I knew it's a privileged world to be in, and it's a lucky place to be in when you're working with professional people that young and for that length of time. So I took it very seriously because there's too many people who want to be in the same position as you. I go into an audition room and there's several people that they're not me, but they're approximations of me. They might be around the same height, same vibe, same look. And because the pool is so small, especially in Irish theatre, film and theatre, there are too many people who want your job. And if you drop the ball on more than one occasion, there'll be 7 other people who want to replace you straight away.
That's right, yeah. And
that's both bad and good, but it's just the way it is.
Yeah. And when you were over in Galway, you mentioned then another company, Decadent?
Decadent, yeah.
Is that theatre work?
That's theatre, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you were involved with them. Was there another company?
There was. The two, like I'm a gun for hire in a way. I will go where any company might want me and where the work is good. But 2 very formative companies would have been Decadent Theatre Company and, of course, Fergoli Theatre Company would have been a massive part of my theatre life. Fergoli Theatre Company was founded by my cousin Maria Tivnan and a number of her friends. So Frank Tivnan's daughter.
Frank's daughter.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
So she and a bunch of her friends founded that company in 2007, and they were producing very dynamic, contemporary work, very exciting, multiple character changes, mad, frenetic energy within the space of an hour, kind of blow the socks off your feet sort of theatre, which is very invigorating and very inspiring to watch. You kind of leave a theatre buzzing and reeling after one of Fergoli's shows. But Maria was and still is very integral to my forming as an actor. And she took her time with me. There was no nepotism involved there. I wasn't, as soon as I started acting in Dramsock, she wasn't like, come join Frigoli. You know, she let me earn my stripes before I started doing any shows with them, and rightly so, that I was more primed and ready to be of their standard. And I have done many's a show with Frigoli, and I've written for them several times. And a lot of my friends that I made in the Drama Society, they came along with me, and joyously they came with me to Frigoli. So Frigoli was a vital stepping stone for us after Dramsock as well, because they were so dynamic and so energetic and so inspiring. And I loved acting with them and writing for them too.
And did you? So you wrote a number of plays, is that right?
Yeah. Maria, she put a lot of trust in me when I was still very young. We got a bursary called the Mike Diskin bursary back in 2015, a bursary to write a play. And it was a lot of money to us at the time. Like it might have only been a grand or two, but that was a lot to us at the time. And I couldn't believe it. And I don't think I've ever said it to her physically, but it was, I'm still kind of blown away by the trust she gave a 24-year-old. It's like, we'll give you this money to write a play for Frigoli, and which I did. And again, I took it very seriously. And maybe it's because my experience as an actor, when it comes to writing, I like putting myself in all the characters' shoes, and I would never write a line that I would not love to say on stage. So I'm not just going to throw out anything and say, the actor will figure it out. They'll put emotional meaning to this. I'm almost like a method writer. I have to put myself
in their shoes.
Yeah, psychologically in their shoes, as an actor has to. And the first play that I wrote for Frigoli was called Pleasure Ground. And those two words will be familiar to many people in Boyle.
Absolutely.
And it is named after the playground in Boyle, and it's about four friends who reunite when someone that they're all connected to passes away suddenly. I needed an excuse for four characters to meet back in their hometown again, and it happened to be a funeral, and then they all meet in their old teenage haunt post-funeral, and a lot of kind of truths and secrets and scores are settled throughout that night. You know, bereavement is a good breeding ground for drama. You know, it sets people on edge and it keeps people vulnerable.
And how then did you get into film as opposed to just theatre work?
Film is more, it's less accessible than theatre, possibly because there's more money riding on it. And you can put a play on in a back garden somewhere, throw up a bit of bunting and throw a few pallets down on the ground and a bit of carpet and just say your lines. But film, you need good equipment, you need good cameras, you need sound operators, you need light operators, you need a lot of people. So as a result, there are more stakes, financial stakes involved, and you need a lot more hands on deck. But the most accessible way into film is probably short films, because, you know, it makes sense. The shorter the film, the less money involved. And so I've done a number of short films with some great companies along the way. Like Project Spatula is a group of like-minded Galway people who just collaborate together and pull all sorts of our individual resources to make films for very little. They're a great company in Galway. And Harp Media is a company that I've worked with a lot recently. I've done a number of short films with them, and they're based in Granard, and they're a very upcoming film company now. Their film Lakelands just won the Galway Film Flab Best Feature last year. It's about a GAA player who gets injured on the field, he gets concussed, and a doctor says, you can't play Gaelic anymore. So it's that notion of he centred his whole identity on GAA, and once that's taken away from you, what are you in the town? How does the town look upon you? You're kind of nothing now. You can't play full forward anymore. So what use are you to us? And you question that yourself. So it's a very affecting film. And currently with them, I'm developing the Pleasure Ground, the play, into a screenplay for them.
A film version.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to get development funding from Screen Ireland. So it's a long road to make a feature film, but it's a good foot in the door to develop the script properly now. It's an exciting prospect. The idea of filming Pleasure Ground in Boyle would be...
Oh, that'd be an amazing...
That's what I want to do. That's what I hope to do. The only problem is it's set in 2009 during the recession, and the Pleasure Ground looks too good now. So
it does.
Now, I can't be giving out about that. Maybe half our budget will be spent on taking the paint off the monkey bars and then putting it on again after we're finished.
But that would be an amazing thing to have, because as well as Moon Boy,
of course,
Dark Lies the Island as
well.
Yeah,
the Kevin Barry
and
stories.
Recently Anne,
yeah.
It's great to see. And I think there's also talk of Chris O'Dowd shooting another movie or something in Boyle as well down the line. I'm not sure.
Well, see, Boyle it's geographically, it's a very enticing place. It's a beautiful, very characterful looking town. Like, it looks really good on screen. There's such great areas. The town of Boyle itself has a great, just small town quality to it that's very enticing on screen. And then the surroundings, you have the Curlew Mountains, which are very dramatic. You have the Plains of Boyle, you have Lough Kay, you have everything that just, and it looks the business.
It's also retained its 80s look as well.
It has. So sometimes all you have to do is park a few old cars along the street.
Which is what they did for Anne.
I know, and
said that
that's good and sad in a way.
Of course, it is. But I suppose from a production filming point of view, it's brilliant.
It leaves things a lot easier.
It really does.
A lot less expensive.
So how would you adapt then your acting approach, Jarlath, from the stage to film? Is there major differences that you have to accomplish?
There are technical differences. I think sometimes there's too much emphasis put on the difference between the difference of theatre acting and film acting. Essentially, for the two of them, you're always searching for the truth of the character and the situation all the time. And I'll always mention, like, if you're in a Martin McDonagh comedy, let's say, the worst thing you could do as a character is to think, I know this line is funny. Because the audience, they mightn't know it consciously, but subconsciously they'll think, that's funny. And as a result, I don't find it funny. But the more truthful and seriously you take the situation, then it's funny. Because it's almost like, what are you laughing at? That's not funny. But it is, because you're treating it really seriously. You're treating it truthfully. The difference between theatre and film is, physically, you just have to make it bigger in theatre. You're on a big stage in front of a couple of hundred people. You have to reach everybody. You have to be louder. You have to be more declamatory. You have to be all those things. But ultimately, you're still seeking for the truth. Film is 100 times more intimacy. So you reel it all in, and you keep the truth just at simmering level, just below the skin, because the camera, it's so intimate. It will find the truth.
Right.
It will find it. If you're phoning it in or you're unsure, the camera is like Hawkeye. Yeah. It will see that you're unsure. But as long as, it's a lot more intimate, of course, but you're still telling the truth. It's more intense, it's more intimate, but the chase for the truth in the scene and the emotional arc of the scene is the same. Yeah. It's just how big or how small you go with it.
And it's interesting you said that about Martin McDonagh's kind of movies, because I noticed that in The Banshees of Inisherin, which a lot of people, they were saying they didn't find that interesting, or I thought it was a brilliant film.
I thought it was fascinating.
But I thought it was hilarious as well in parts. But the way the character, whether it was Brendan or Colin, they were
it's not one bit funny to them.
Yeah, exactly.
The stakes are massive.
Yeah, they don't.
Colin Farrell's losing his best friend.
Yes, yeah, and the thing is losing his fingers in the process.
He's losing his fingers and he's losing his mind. He's saying, I've wasted 40 years of my life being a friend with a dim-witted fool.
Yes.
And I could have been making meaning out of my life. So I've only 10 years left, so I'm not friends with you anymore.
But the crowd and the audience, like, there was a lot of them laughing at those parts because it was funny, but they didn't portray it as funny on the screen, which is what you were saying.
The stakes have to be high.
Yeah.
That's a word that's bandied about a lot. You'll have it in the writing. What are the stakes of the scene? What's on the line here? What's important for the character? Like, the very basis of storytelling in its very simplistic form is a character wants something, you put an obstacle in their way, how is the character going to beat the obstacle, or are they going to beat the obstacle to get what they want? That's the very basis of storytelling. And if they get through the obstacle, how are they altered by the time they get through the problem? And it's a twofold thing. When you're writing a character, you have to do what the character wants versus what the character needs, because ultimately what they want isn't actually what they need.
Yeah,
Do you know?
Of course.
A character might want to be left alone, but ultimately they need connection with somebody.
Yeah.
You know.
And stepping into these different character roles, Jarlath, it must be a challenge in itself. So how would you prepare yourself for these various characters?
Well, the very first of all, the very basic element would be learning your lines. I'm not one of those people who would sit down with a cup of coffee and learn my lines at home. I learn as I go. I have very little problem learning lines. I learn lines in the rehearsal room.
Okay.
I'll do the scene a couple of times and then I'll put the book away and we'll try it, because I feel like I'm carrying around a cement block. It's the same thing.
Sure.
Like, you don't go around Super Value with a book in your hand, you know, with what you're going to say on it. That sounds a bit facetious, but there's truth in it. But that doesn't mean that I won't go home at night and look at the script again, where I thought there was an and is actually a but. You know, I might refer back to the script even halfway through a show run. I'll always return to the script to make sure I'm staying truthful to the lines. The biggest process is, I've mentioned it already, is finding the truth in the lines. It's easy to learn lines when you psychologically understand why the character is saying what they're saying, or why another character would say that thing about you. It's all about finding the moments of truth. And then, if it makes psychological sense, then line learning isn't a thing. It makes sense in your brain now.
Yes, yeah.
And I suppose that's the difference maybe when you want to become professional. No professional actor is worried about what they're going to say next. You know it psychologically so well that you trust you can put everything that you've learned in the rehearsal room into the back of your mind, go on free on stage, and trust that it'll all come out at the right time.
So there is some kind of breathing space in the script.
Not in terms of words, like especially with theatre, their playwright is very much respected, but what's the best way I could put it? You do 3 weeks of rehearsals and you generally know to put the glass down on this line or to get up on this line and go and move over to stage left. You have your general directions and you have your lines. But I use the analogy, you know, that screensaver when your computer goes and a little ball is bouncing between frame to frame to frame. The frame is your directions and your script, but in between that's where the liveness of theatre comes. That's your little playground within. You can put a little different intonation into your line, or a frisson of anger at the end of that line, if it makes sense. You know, they're the little moments that you can surprise your fellow actor, and if they're listening to you, they will respond accordingly. So that's going back to your original question. It takes a long time to get to that level of certainty and assurance in the rehearsal room. So you prepare by getting to know the truth of the character and the scripts. And if you're playing a factual character, of course you're going to listen to interviews about them or watch videos about them, read as much as you can about them. But even if it's a fictitious character, more often than not, your fictitious character is going through a real life thing, whether it's a condition they're dealing with or a bereavement they're dealing with or a specific situation that's akin to real life. If you haven't experienced it yourself, you maybe talk to somebody that has experienced it or is afflicted with it, so you can take that truth and put it into your own heart and mind when you're portraying the character.
And give it your own stamp.
Yeah.
And you would have worked with a lot of different cast members over the years. Is there any one particular collaboration that would have enhanced your performance or overall experience?
I would say you can read a book about learning how to ride a bike, but eventually you just have to get up on it. And it's the same with, there's millions of acting books out there, but I've learned the most simply by acting with people who have done it a lot longer than I have. I won't mention anyone in particular, just generally the theatre stalwarts that I've worked with. I've been lucky enough to work with many of them, and I would make it my business to just observe them in the rehearsal room and observe their behaviour before they go on stage and their little preparations, how they build up to 7:30 or 8:00 that night when the light comes on and they come through the door. I've always been fascinated by people's little rituals and how they ground themselves.
The psychological aspect behind it.
Yes. I used to always be kind of envious and marvel at, it sounds like a broad word, but the control that the older actors had. I felt like, it's like, are you not jittery? Are you not, running up the walls trying to gear yourself up? But they had already done that internally. You just can't see it. And whereas I might be doing 20 press-ups to go on stage, or, I'm being silly about it.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
And I'd be like, oh, they're not hot. They're not ready to go on stage. But ultimately, they were way more in control than I was when I was a lot younger and a lot more inexperienced. So I've learned by watching them the element of control. I'm in control a lot more than I used to be when I walk out on stage. I have the right. Of course I do my warm-ups, my physical and my vocal ones, but I've learned by watching them to have the right amount of jitters and nervousness, the right amount that keeps you on your toes but doesn't debilitate you.
From the performance.
Exactly. And I've learned by watching those actors, they might hit the marks that they've learned in the rehearsal room very clearly and intentionally, the first few ones, just to ground themselves. I've learned to ground myself when I come on stage a lot quicker. I've learned to find myself physically in my own body, to feel my feet on the ground, to hear my own self, and to hear, more importantly, what the actor is saying to me. A dangerous thing that you can get into is like flight mode, where the lines are coming out of you, but you're not really listening.
Getcha.
So you're answering them, but there's something off. You're saying the right words, but there's something unnatural about it. Like a good example I'll give is that show I previously mentioned, The Skull and Connemara. That was a very popular show, and it did gangbusters business in terms of people. So we did that show. We did 3 tours on 3 separate occasions of that show, 3 national tours. And the first time my lead co-actor was John O'Lohan. The second time it was Gareth Keogh, and the third time it was Pat Short, a name most people would be familiar with. All 3 brilliant stalwart actors. And I can chart my own improvement through those shows in terms of my control coming out on stage. And we were in the Olympia or the Gaiety, and there could be 900 or 1,000 people, and you can physically feel the buzz. The first time I went on tour, it was almost like an out-of-body experience. I was almost hovering above myself, hearing myself say the lines, and subconsciously I probably set the audience on edge because I just wasn't fully in control. But by the third time I did the show, I was very in control. I was very centered. Very centered.
Building up,
And I was listening.
Which, as you said, was very important.
Yeah.
You're not just rhyming off your lines on your end. Yeah.
I was. We always talk about being in the moment. I was in the moment.
So I suppose the stage offers then a kind of an intimacy of a live audience, as opposed to a film that will potentially reach the global audience.
Yes.
Which would you, if you were to pick one to do for just say the next 5 years, and you could only do one, which would be your preference?
Right now, because artists are very mercurial people, so you might get a different answer from one day to the next. But right now, if it was for the next 5 years, I would say film, simply because I want to break into that world more. They each have their pros and their cons, and I understand. Conversely, if a person who has been in film for a long time says, I just want to get back to the theatre, and in front of a live audience and feel the real emotions coming towards me. I understand when people say that, but I'm the opposite. So right now I'm getting a real buzz off the intimacy of a film set and the quietness and the inwardness and the close-upness of film is very attractive to me right now, simply because I haven't done as much.
Right. Okay.
And as you mentioned, the enticement of reaching more people. Like, I've worked very hard on plays sometimes, both just acting in and acting and writing. And the tragedy of it is sometimes the crowds are just not there. So you've broken your back for months and months and months, and very few people see it. But the beauty, the pro and the con of a film or a TV show is it's lightning in a bottle. So if you've done a good job, it's trapped. It's there forever for anyone to see at any given time, and they don't have to get up off their ass to see it. They can just watch it from their couch.
Yeah.
Now, the gamble is you've got to done a piece of crap as well, and that's there forever as well.
Yeah,
but that is very enticing, because ultimately every artist worth their salt, at the end of the day, all they want to do is connect, to tell a good story, and to make somebody feel less alone, or to make somebody feel something, or to solidify someone's opinions, or to alter them. And the idea of being able to connect with a wide audience with a good story and a good character is obviously very enticing, and just film and TV has that capability a lot more than theatre does. It's just the way it is.
And are there any roles or projects that you're looking to pursue in the film? Is there any kind of dream role that you'd like to get as such?
A lot of people have an answer straight away for that, be it theatre or film. I'd love to be the next James Bond, or I'd love to be the next Stanley in A Streetcar Named Desire. I don't have a role that bangs straight out of the trap to say I would love to do my great version of Hamlet. I always, be it a classical character or a brand new character, I just want to be challenged in terms of emotion and storytelling. My favourite type of characters to play and my favourite type of characters to write are ordinary people put into extraordinary situations. Their roles I'm always ripe to play, and I'll pounce on that, because that's where real drama is, because an ordinary person, for want of a better term, is not equipped to deal with an extreme situation, so they're going to fight their way out of it, but they're going to do it in a really bad way, in a really ugly way, and they're going to make a lot of mistakes to get to the other side, and that's very entertaining to write and to watch and to play. Yeah.
And another kind of question that I'd like to understand more is, as a freelance actor as such, would you have, there must be a lot of uncertainty as well, maybe, which maybe how even the likes of AI is going to play a role in the whole acting side of things going forward. I think there was recently an actors and a writers strike.
Yeah.
What are your views on the whole AI side of things from an acting point of view?
I think it's very frightening. I think it's morally abhorrent as well, to be honest. Obviously, if there was any strikes here, I'd be a part of them, but you need your famous actors to be doing it, which they are. You need your George Clooney's or your Brian Cox's or your Kate Blanchetts or whoever to be representing, because they're the face of the world in terms of actors. Everybody knows who they are, so you need those people fighting for the rights, because the route that it's going down, artists and particularly actors are losing domain over their own bodies.
Exactly.
Voices and like appearances. You have business moguls just putting words into your mouth and making your arms and legs do things that you are not doing. The way it's going, you could be dead for 30 years, and these big streamers could be putting you in roles, and you're in the grave in reality, which is just insane. And I don't know, I could be wrong. Who can predict the future? Who can predict how far and how scarily far science and our AI can go? But it's my belief, I don't care how scarily, let's say, how scarily I could be created on screen without my permission. No matter how advanced AI becomes, it's going to be missing that one integral thing. And you can take this word metaphorically, figuratively, or realistically, and that is soul.
Yeah.
You can't create soul.
You can't.
That's the ultimate nuance, that every artist will have the most unpredictable. I don't care how many algorithms. An AI might have 10 billion facts and I might only have 10, but I'm going to have a soul and they won't. And I don't care how smart they are, they're never going to accurately predict how I will take on a role or portray a role.
Yeah, because I'm very thing in the whole AI space as well. I'm involved in the digital space, but already the likes of ChatGPT, which I'm sure you're familiar with. For anyone that isn't, ChatGPT is better known as Chat. It's a generative pre-trained transformer. So it basically uses natural language and machine learning to give out an output that is almost human-like. It is human-like in context. But that's already disrupting massive industries.
Yeah.
But I see, unfortunately, and I mean, I don't know how long this would take. I hope it wouldn't be in our lifetime. But I can see the day comes where Hollywood, for example, can create an actor persona that's just a persona on screen, an actor, and you will have all these followers and fans that love this actor, kind of like a cartoon character,
a real life Pokemon or something.
Exactly that. Only that this person is everything that they're just not physically real.
Yeah,
I can see that coming. That might happen, unfortunately, in our time.
Yeah,
but I do think it is coming, and that's a scary.
It's a bit depressing as well,
very, very depressing.
Because all art, the nucleus of art is humanity. That's the job of art, is to connect everybody globally and make people feel less alone and make people feel like their thoughts are not uniquely their own, that they're not on their own when it comes to a lot of things. Or I don't know. It's a bit.
It is.
It's more than a bit unnerving.
Yeah. The only thing I can see as well is, unfortunately, I don't think AI is going anywhere. It's like, is the internet ever going to disappear? Not really.
Yeah.
I don't think. Now, I don't know how far it will go in different disciplines, but it's certainly not going to go away as we knew.
No. But you know what could ultimately be a flaw in the journey for perfection when it comes to AI is the beauty of most art is that it's imperfect.
Yeah.
Do you know
True.
that the flaw is within the painting or the poem? It's human because it's imperfect because it's human. And when it comes to theatre, are we going to have a bunch of pre-programmed robots walk out on stage and deliver the same perfect performance every night because it's exactly programmed into them? Whereas the beauty of theatre is what you tried last night, if you tried it again the next night, it'd fall flat because it's not true. And the beauty of it is someone could drop a line at any moment and you have to improvise and get the show back on the rails as quick as you can.
I'm sure there's people out there that will say, well, the AI can be programmed to be inconsistent.
Yeah, but then that's still predestined. It's still, that's perfection still.
It's programmed, yeah, exactly. So it loses the inherent ability to make a mistake.
Yeah. It's like, well, that's a purposeful mistake, so that's actually perfect.
Exactly. If someone was trying to follow Jarlath in your footsteps in terms of they want to get into the theatre, the film side of things, what advice or tidbits of knowledge would you give someone that was looking to go down that route?
I'd say a couple of things. I'd say don't do it because, no, I won't be facetious about it. Like a lot of people just say, oh, don't do it. It's like, you'll know if it's an undeniable thing that you want to do, but don't do it to be loved or noticed or popular or that dirty word famous, because that's a candle that'll burn bright but burn fast out. You have to have a lot more in the tank than that. For every one actor who makes it globally, there's 1,000 who are just working artists, working away to make ends meet, getting up, hitting the desk at 8 o'clock every morning, not knowing whether this thing will go anywhere or they'll financially gain from it, not knowing if this play is the next big thing or the next humdrum thing. So you have to be in it because it's almost an extra organ within you. It's a passion that you actually can't live without. That's one thing. If you can add strings to your bow, if you were lucky enough to be able to write, do write. Sometimes you can be waiting around for the phone to ring. But if you could create work for yourself, if you can do that, if you have the patience for it, try that as well. But also, you deal with a lot of rejection, and it takes a while to learn that just because you're not cast in a play, it's more than likely not because you're not good enough. It's because you're just not right for that part, or you don't fit into that director's vision. You have to have a bit of a thick skin. Don't take things personally, and also don't make it it has to be a very important thing in your life, but have other things that bring you joy as well.
Exactly.
Have other outlets in life. Don't make it everything because you might be a bit unhappy. You have to have other things in life that brings you joy.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned obviously the pleasure grounds that has featured in some of your work, but would Boyle have influenced your creative endeavours in any other way?
I would say 100%, because I mentioned to you earlier that a lot of my sensibilities, especially when it comes to writing, is the ordinary person in the extraordinary situation. And no shade on Boyle or any small town, but I think, it's an ordinary place, but that's where the most extraordinary stories happen. I'm not interested in writing about billionaires or superheroes. I want to write about the people who shop in SuperValu and go to mass, and the actual people. So in that respect, I grew up in it. I am one of those people, and so they fascinate me the most. And like every small town, it doesn't have to. It can be a small town in Lithuania. The mentality is often the same, and it's ripe for drama. We love news. We love gossip. We love talking behind each other's backs. We like giving out about people. We
begrudging.
Begrudging and bitterness, and we'll smile at someone and then give them the two fingers as soon as they go around the corner. That's great crack. That's great drama, and the best raconteurs are from small towns in Ireland, and the best sense of humour comes from small towns in Ireland. The most contradictory people reside in small towns in Ireland. It's brilliant, and I'm delighted that I grew up in it, and I am that, and I have it in me. So 100%, it's whether I like it or not, I'm heavily influenced by it, but I do like it.
And going forward, Jarlath, what's in the pipeline? Any long-term goals or aspirations, both personally and professionally, that...
Well, I'll kind of take both personal and professional. My long-term goal is nothing. There's no one project that I'm building up to. My long-term goal, if I can, I work very hard at what I do consistently, whether I know it's going to bring me anywhere or not, any particular project. My long-term goal is to be able to work and support myself, both emotionally, artistically, financially, in all those respects. That's when I'm happiest. I love being busy. I love working. And if the work that I love and hate sometimes simultaneously, but ultimately I love it, if that can support me and those around me through life in every respect, that's both my short and my long-term goal. If I can mar those two, then I'm happy as anybody can be.
And that's the main thing.
Yeah, that's the short and the long of it.
Yeah. And just before we wrap it up, is there anything else that you'd like to touch on that we already haven't?
Oh God. No, I don't think so. Like you were saying, I might be tossing and turning tonight saying, oh, why didn't I mention that? And why didn't I mention this? But sure, isn't that the beauty of live performance?
Exactly.
You're going to hit some things and you're going to miss other things by a mile.
And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Jarlath, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks
really
very
enjoyed
much,
the
Carlo.
conversation, and thanks for taking the time.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So that's it for this episode, folks. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you like the content, we'd really appreciate it if you could share it. You can follow us on Facebook by searching for Voices of Boyle, and you can also contact us on our website by visiting voicesofboyle.com. We're always looking for new guests, so if you'd like to be on the show, or if you know someone who you'd like to join us, please reach out to us via our Facebook page or website. Thanks very much, and we'll chat to you again soon.